On January 16th at 6 p.m., the Halifax government had a public hearing regarding a long-term care facility with 128 beds, which also function as shared housing, making those 128 beds, 128 units of housing, just de facto. The government had to consult with the community to decide whether or not they will allow this facility to be constructed in the first place. This is because they have to, as per the HRM charter. It's also because it's proposed to being built on a single-family zone, something that while the Halifax government will be removing once the HAF agreement is fulfilled, this hearing would still have to take place because it's above 4 units and functions as an institution. Though most of the councillors were not present for the vote, it thankfully passed unanimously amongst the few who were there. And while it's better that this passed than them having voted against it, the mere fact that this development was stalled for who knows how long because the government felt that they had to consult the community, or as I like to call them, people who were not seeking healthcare in those facilities, and made the developers of that facility prove to the government that providing people with their basic human needs of both healthcare and housing was worth it, is something that I find pretty reprehensible. The mere fact that people want to do that to people is reprehensible to me. Here is what we, More Homes Halifax, had to say to the Halifax government about this, right to their faces at the public hearing.
Hi, my name is Joseph Kirby. I am a resident of Dartmouth South, so I don't live near this, but in my opinion, it doesn't matter. I think that, so the reason why I came here tonight is because I read on the HRM's website that tonight everybody was going to be debating whether or not a long-term care facility that's supposed to have 128 beds, I believe it said on the site. I thought I might have heard 120 in the presentation, but it's splitting hairs in my opinion. It's still a lot of beds, and that's good. And yeah, I'm reading about this long-term care facility that's going to be built with 128 beds, and it would doubly function as, you know, shared housing too, because it's long-term care. They're going to be living there. So as far as I'm concerned, that doubles for 128 units. So when I look at that, I think, wow, we have a healthcare crisis and a housing crisis in the city, in the province, in the country, and I'm thinking this is a fantastic service to be able to provide to our communities. I can't wait until they can build it. But they can't build it without consulting me, consulting all of you, and consulting everybody here. In my opinion, it is not really any of my business. If people need to access a basic need, such as housing or healthcare, I don't believe that I have any right to tell them that they can't, and I don't believe any government has any right to tell them that they can't either. I mean, you're allowed to, for sure. That's how it's set up right now, but I don't believe that anybody should be allowed to do that to somebody, and it's just because I look at this stuff all the time. I'm following these situations very closely, and I'm just seeing things getting worse and worse and worse, and it feels like zoning policies that prevent people from being able to access their basic needs are a huge issue not just in this city, but many cities all around the country. And I hope that not only do you all vote enthusiastically in favor of this, because there are absolutely no downsides. It's not hurting anybody to build this. In fact, it's going to actively help approximately 120 or so people. So I don't see any reason for me to tell them, sorry, you are not allowed to access housing and you are not allowed to access healthcare. I just don't see any reason not to. I think the people back here who gave this presentation are providing a fantastic service to our city, our province, our country, and we should let them build our society up. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Gabby Sorensen and I live in Bedford. According to the Provincial Finance Department, 1 in 10 of our seniors live in poverty. At a time when inflation has resulted in an elevated cost of living, particularly for those on fixed incomes, it is more important than ever that our seniors have speedy access to food, shelter, and medical care. Today, we are debating the construction of a new long-term care facility in Halifax. This project will provide 128 beds for seniors in our city, providing shelter and reducing medical wait times. In my opinion, this fact alone is sufficient for approval. To the present councillors, All you have to do is vote in favor, and then 128 people will have a place to stay that they might not otherwise have. I do not believe neighborhood compatibility is a sufficient reason to deny people needed units. However, even on that front, discounting a senior's home due to noise and a handful of staff coming to and fro is frankly a ridiculous standard. On principle, unless the developers in question propose something truly outrageous, and by outrageous I don't mean 4 stories, any development that increases our city's housing supply should be rubber stamped. We are in a housing and healthcare crisis, and yet housing starts have declined in real terms since 2021. I urge you to approve this project and all those like it. Additionally, not every proposal needs to be subject to a drawn-out public process. Indeed, most probably shouldn't. In my opinion, our city councilors probably have bigger issues to address than nitpicking the validity of gravel driveways on single-family homes, for example. Thank you for hearing me out. I hope you all have a lovely evening.
Remember, this idea that the government can impose a blockade on all of our basic needs until the community consents and decides it's okay because they may not like the height, or that more people are living near them, or that more people may be using the road and taking up traffic, or that it doesn't fit the neighborhood character, or the completely baseless idea that more services provided in your neighborhood will negatively impact your property value is, in my opinion at least, a violation of our basic human rights to life, liberty, and security of the person. We are Canadian after all, and we recognize healthcare as a human right by virtue that it is a basic need. And we do need to start calling this out for what it is, a blockade. While it's certainly a soft blockade and one that is legal to do and has been bureaucratically justified, it is still, by any colloquial understanding of the term, a blockade. The government is telling the sick and disproportionately senior citizens of our city that they are not allowed to have access to this healthcare facility until random people who are not using this facility from the neighborhood surrounding it tells them that it's okay to, and the government legitimizes those concerns and decides that such random people made a good case for why those people should have access to housing and healthcare. This is how it works. The person providing the service consents to giving you that service, you consent to acquiring that service, and then the government decides, well, hold on a second, isn't there somebody you forgot to ask first? Given how much the very notion of having such a public hearing negatively impacts seniors, as was demonstrated in the earlier clips of us speaking to council, it speaks to another problem. Some people who identify as yes in my backyard, which is a sort of tongue-in-cheek term that's meant to oppose NIMBYs, not in my backyard, and believe me, our policy agenda is certainly far more sympathetic to the YIMBY side than the NIMBY side, which I'm sure is of no surprise to anybody watching this video. However, they will sometimes try to turn the housing crisis into a generational culture war. Much of the NIMBY side of the debate are of the boomer generation, and so there's these hasty generalizations that people can make about senior citizens amongst the YIMBY side, who are, of course, closer to my age, usually in their 20s, 30s, millennials, Gen Z, etc. And while I certainly understand why that connection is being made, I'd like to say up front, demonizing senior citizens is not okay. They are being hurt by the NIMBY policies that I've described, myself and others as well. It's terrible. And it's not only terrible because it will do nothing to solve the housing crisis, it's just terrible on principle. We shouldn't have to attack people for their immutable characteristics because we want to solve the housing crisis. So, from one YIMBY to another YIMBY, please respect senior citizens. Senior citizens are hurting because of this too, because of this NIMBY ideology that permeates many of our cities. Thank you.